In the Philippine Sea, east of Luzon, the calm of routine shattered. A sonar operator aboard the USS Ronald Reagan froze. His screen showed a trace that didn't belong, and seconds later, proof erupted through the waves. A Chinese submarine breaking the surface inside the carrier's protective bubble. This wasn't poor navigation, it was a disaster in the making. A Yuan-class diesel-electric boat, forced up by dying batteries, had picked the worst possible place to breathe, right next to America's most heavily defended aircraft carrier. On the Reagan's bridge, no one panicked. Escorts tightened their screen. Helicopters launched. The carrier kept its speed steady, as if nothing had happened. But in truth, every second that submarine sat exposed was not intimidation. It was revelation. Sensors and radars locked onto its profile, soaking up details the U.S. Navy could turn into a permanent advantage. What Beijing might frame as defiance was, in reality, a catastrophic mistake. It had started as just a whisper on sonar. The USS Shoup, an Arleigh Burke class destroyer, caught the faint low-frequency pulse at about 120 meters depth, moving under 8 knots. The Combat Information Center lit up as data from multiple ships converged. Within minutes, the Reagan strike group knew it wasn't alone. Around the carrier, the formation looked like armor. Ticonderoga cruisers and destroyers carried long-range missiles. High above, E-2D Hawkeyes extended radar hundreds of miles. But the real bloodhounds were the MH-60R Seahawks. One of them, call sign Knight 614, dropped its sonar into the sea. Within minutes, it confirmed the truth. The Chinese sub was cautious, hugging a thermal layer, but its batteries were fading. And when batteries fade, silence gives way to desperation. The Americans didn't scramble. They sharpened their picture. Cavitation trails, propeller blade counts, vibrations in the hull. To outsiders, just echoes. To the Navy, a fingerprint. The strike group wasn't surprised. They were waiting for the inevitable. Forced by dwindling batteries, the boat surfaced from necessity, not bravado. Watchstanders understood. The initiative was already slipping. As links fused inputs from hull sonars, towed arrays, and the helicopter's first sweeps, a vague track became a three-dimensional picture with rising confidence. No one reached for drama, they reached for checklists. The pattern matched familiar drills, steps that turn an unknown into a classified, cataloged threat. It happened faster than expected. At 7:04 local time, the sea tore open. One moment, empty horizon. The next, a dark sail burst from the waves just 3 miles from the carrier. Lookouts called it instantly. Submarine surfaced, port side. This wasn't stealth. It was survival. Even modern Yuan-class subs with air-independent propulsion can't stay submerged forever. A patrol stretch too long means batteries deplete, oxygen runs thin, and the captain must choose surface and risk exposure, or stay down and lose propulsion. On this morning, he surfaced in the worst possible place. The first to see it weren't radar operators but sailors on deck, going about routine work. To them, it was surreal, watching a Chinese sub climb out of the sea like an intruder in the wrong cage. Protocol snapped into place. A calm American voice carried across the open frequency. Unidentified submarine. You are operating in the vicinity of a United States carrier strike group. Acknowledge and maintain safe separation. Escorts shifted instantly. The destroyer USS Shoup moved to block the sub's bow. USS Mustin angled to cover its flank. Overhead, the Seahawks circled, its sensors dissecting every churn of the propellers as the sub tried to hold at periscope depth. On board the Reagan, flight operations didn't even pause. Jets roared off the deck, thunder shaking the sea. To the Chinese crew, the message was suffocating. An aircraft carrier surrounded by escorts, utterly unshaken. What was supposed to be a display of presence had turned into a spectacle of exposure. Every minute on the surface became a broadcast of secrets. Radars caught its emissions. Sonars logged its acoustics. Electronic suites intercepted its communications. Instead of intimidating, the submarine had handed the U.S. Navy a priceless opportunity. Range was called at roughly 3 miles portside, wording drilled in simulators. Weapons stayed tight, but every layer stood ready to react if the boat lunged or crash dived. The Seahawk held bearing and, if ordered, could drop a weapon. More important, it kept logging how the sub behaved under stress. Across the Reagan, radios stayed sterile and professional, discipline preventing small mistakes from becoming headlines. What looked like a black silhouette on the sea was, in fact, a beacon. Every sweep of the submarine's navigation radar was captured. Every vibration of its diesel engines, every churn of its cooling pumps, each one stored. To U.S. analysts, these weren't random sounds. They were signatures, fingerprints that could be used years later to identify the same class instantly. Electronic warfare suites added more layers. A burst of SATCOM toward Beijing, logged. A shortwave call to Coastal Command, captured. Even the imperfections in transmission became part of the file. The Americans didn't fire a shot. They didn't need to. They simply let the submarine bleed its secrets into the air and sea. This wasn't the first time. In 2006, a Chinese Yuan-class sub surfaced near the USS Kitty Hawk. In 2015, another shadowed the Reagan and betrayed its patterns. Each time, the outcome was the same. A so-called show of presence became an intelligence harvest. And in 2025, the cycle repeated. Inside the Reagan's Combat Center, no one raised their voice. The operations officer simply noted, "Contact surfaced." Recording data. Calm, clinical, almost bored. The Chinese submarine captain may have believed he had staged a bold encounter. In truth, he had walked into an American trap that required no bait at all. When the submarine finally edged away and slipped beneath the surface, the strike group didn't celebrate. They didn't have to. Victory wasn't about sinking an enemy. It was about knowing more. And the U.S. Navy now knew far more than it had 15 minutes earlier. Diesel-electric boats like the Yuan-class are dangerous in shallow seas. Silent on battery, armed with torpedoes, they can threaten even carriers. But endurance is their weakness. Physics demands surfacing, and each time they rise near a carrier strike group, they risk becoming an exhibit for U.S. censors. For Beijing, the lesson is sharp. Stunts meant for headlines at home backfire at sea. For Washington, the lesson is simple. Stay calm, hold fire, and let the opponent reveal themselves. In modern naval warfare, silence can be deadlier than gunfire. So let me ask you, if you were the submarine's captain, batteries dying, would you risk surfacing near the world's most powerful carrier, or dive deeper and hope no one noticed? And if you stood on the Reagan's bridge that morning, would you have fired a warning shot or trusted discipline to prevail? Share your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and pass this story to someone who loves real naval encounters. Because sometimes the strongest weapon isn't a missile, but patience. Those captures do not sit idle. They seed trainers, update threat libraries, and sharpen recognition for the next approach. Analysts cross-reference the new haul with 2006 and 2015, aligning peculiarities so future operators classify in seconds. There were no cheers on the bridge when the contact faded, only log entries and routine reports, the quiet satisfaction of sailors who had done the job as written.